Yeah, we're just there. We go.
And we
So we're,
live. So, hi everyone. So I would like to start by saying hi to Andy and to Joe. My name is Veronica. I work for the FBS. So does Joe. He's the founder of FBS. And today we're going to be having a chat with Andy, Darcy, Theo, who is local to Enfield, our
Yeah.
neighbor. And I'll pass it on to Andy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and then we jump in with the questions.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Andy, and I am a teacher at school in Enfield, and I'm also an author. My debut book, The Light That Blinds Us, came out in April last year and became an instant bestseller. And I've been working on that, and the upcoming book is out next month. Called The Dark That Hides Us, and it's a young adult fantasy series that's inspired by a family history of psychosis and by my own occupational background working in psychiatric hospitals and working as a private clinical psychology assistant. So there's a lot of psychological influences in the story. It's an epic fantasy story, mythological creatures, but with a lot of undertones from psychology, nature versus nurture, free will versus determinism, light versus darkness, which paints for a page-turning young adult read, hopefully. When I'm not writing, which is most of the time, I'm also content creating. So I'm a content creator under the same tag, Andy Darcy Theo, where I do TikToks and Instagram videos about being a writer, how to write, and kind of book reviews and other silly stuff like that.
That's fantastic. So I'm gonna dive in right with the question. So we know from your bio, I'll tell everyone now that you've been writing since you were 13. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah.
So now, then you chosen psychology. So, and then you use of psychology in your writing. So I suppose my question is, what came first? Obviously, I don't know many boys who would be 13 and said, you know what? When I grow up, I'm going to be a psychologist. So how did that all tie together?
You know what? It's a really complicated story in the sense that it wasn't like one and then the other one triggered. It was kind of like at the same time. It was a very symbiotic relationship. So I studied psychology as a GCSE. So when I was 15, 16, which a lot of schools don't offer, like for example, the school that I teach at is only at A level. And I was always just interested in the study of behavior and why people behave the way that they do and why people think the way that they do. And I think that came from my own family history where there were some people that experienced psychological difficulties. So I just wanted to understand why that was the case. At the same time, I had a project in English when I was in school, when I was 13 years old. And it was the project was to write a one-page story that ends in a cliffhanger. And I had been daydreaming for many months about this story in my head about this one scene where this boy jumps off of the edge of a waterfall to save the girl that he loves. And I just was like, okay, here's my opportunity where I can write a story around that. So when I was writing the story, it was kind of like separately. I ended up writing 40 pages that ended up becoming a whole book that I ended up writing a series based on, which is the series that has now been published, The Light That Blinds Us. But it was as I was doing A level and then doing university and studying psychology in a much deeper sense that I realized that what we see about psychology and especially about mental illness in the media is often inaccurate, and it's glamorized and sensationalized and is not depicted authentically because they want to make it seem more elaborate or maybe more romanticized than what it should be. So when I was going back to rewriting my books after taking a 5-year gap over uni, it was when COVID hit, so 2020. I went back to writing the book series that I started when I was 13, realized that they were rubbish and rewrote them. And I was like, I want my unique selling point to be the psychology influence, especially psychosis, which we really don't see depicted actually at all, and probably the one that I had the most experience of working with my patients. So it was very much like there would be no psychology without the book. And my interest in writing characters that were complex and developed helped me understand perspective taking and I guess psychology in a much deeper sense as well. So very like closely into what.
So I'm going to ask you now. Sorry, go on, Joe.
No, I was just
Go
going
on,
to
Joe.
ask about when you say it wasn't depicted accurately, what was missing from these depictions?
I think from when we see it, it's often considered to be this thing where people have a trigger and they are triggered by something, and that causes the mental health difficulties, and then that by meeting a nice fictional character that brings them love, that can suddenly cure it, and that all it takes is one day they kind of wake up and it's solved, or that they need to do one thing. And I don't think they show the grittiness of mental health and how it doesn't always need to be triggered by an activating event. Sometimes it does just emerge without seemingly any kind of cause. So there's like I kind of, when I was learning about like endogenous depression versus activated depression and stuff like that, and then how it's a journey, it's an uphill battle for a lot of people. It's not just one day they wake up and they're no longer depressed because they did one therapy session or they had a breakthrough. It's more like they need to continuously work at it. That's what I wanted to show, that it can be part of someone's identity without being the sole identifier of that person as well. So it's a person with depression as opposed to a depressed person. And it sounds really, really like simple, like obviously, but it helps to put the person above the condition, which I think is quite nice in terms of like regaining someone's sense of autonomy.
Yeah, and like you say, that person with a label is still a person, and they're an individual.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, Veronica, you were gonna.
No, absolutely. So I want to ask you a very solution-focused question, because the way we work is solution-focused. So I'm gonna ask, what difference did it make when you went back and rewrite the book and you looked back when you were 13, although it was the initial idea, you changed it. So what difference did it make to you when you did change the idea to what you wanted?
Yeah, everything. It in terms of the structure and the actual contents of the story and the characters, that remained largely intact. But in terms of how I approached writing and the writing quality was so much better, just because I was that much older and I had spent that much more time developing just my own abilities in terms of being a young person, becoming more literate, but also because I read more. And I feel like if you want to practice anything, if you want to become good at anything, you have to practice it quite extensively, whether that's like explicitly practicing it or implicitly making it a part of your life. So when I was 13, it was just the books that I was reading. It was kind of like picking and choosing the bits that I liked. But as I got older, I was like, well, I want my prose to become better. I want the scene to become integral. I want the characters to feel vivid and fleshed out, like they exist before the book existed, and that they'll continue to exist after the readers put the book down. And I only was able to do that effectively by studying writing techniques, and also just by reading a wider range of books, not just fantasy books and young adult books, but like thrillers, romance books. So by studying widely, even though it was a pastime, it's something I didn't really do, with a pen and paper, I just became so much more confident in my own voice as well as a writer, so that I didn't feel like I had to piggyback off any other author's voice, but I can kind of just establish my own. And it just made me feel so much more, I guess, empowered. I felt really really proud of myself for being able to go back and work on something that I absolutely adored when I was younger, and that saved me from a lot of things when I was younger, but to make it better and to make it just as important to my character now as a 24, 25-year-old as it was then when I was 13.
That's fantastic. I love that. I like that proud moment. That's very big for the work we do. And I got another question from that. So when a child goes through, some psychological issues, mental health issues, what difference do you think that book will make to them?
I think so. I'm my own biggest critique. I always look for, like, I'm not innately an optimistic person. I try to present myself, but deep down I know that I am always someone that's looking out for the shadows, and that's something that I'm actively trying to work on. So I guess the best answer to that question I can give is the responses from readers. When I'm reading readers' reviews, that's when I see that what I've intended to write has struck true. That someone I got one of the nicest messages the other day that like literally brought tears to my eyes. It was a girl that said that she was homeschooled because she experienced a lot of difficulties and always felt isolated because she didn't have many friends, and that she felt herself really resonating with the main character Alexis and with his journey and with his resilience, in that it doesn't matter how many times he gets knocked down, so long as he gets up one more time. And I feel like with Alexis's mantra throughout the whole story, because he's the main character that experiences a lot of these difficulties due to psychotic experiences when he was younger, and abuse, and a lot of other things that really affects a lot of people. His mantra is, I didn't come this far just to come this far. And it's a really good callback that I can kind of do throughout the book, and also throughout the series, even in book 2 that's coming out soon. It's that callback, as he's made so much progress and he shouldn't let one slip become a fall and go all the way back down, because he deserves, and the person that got him there deserves to succeed. And when I'm seeing readers' reviews saying that this scene really struck them, or that they've been able to find comfort in this character or in this character's journey, that's when I'm like, okay, yes, it's fun. Yes, there's a fight scene. Yes, there's romance in it, but that's always been at the core of my story, and there's nothing more than I adore than that. So yeah.
That's absolutely lovely that you have a reader who can identify with with the main character, because they might have had similar problems or similar issues, and it's written in a fantasy world, as you say, with fun on the side, with a bit of a fight, and elementals and crystals, and just a lot of fun. And you've got this when you do get the reviews which complement the main point you were trying to pass as a writer, I can imagine that must be, as you say, it brought tears to your eyes.
Yeah, it really
I think
is.
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's been a very because it's very easy, I think, especially for me as well. So I see like the successes of other books and books being turned into films, and I'm always very much like setting high expectations for myself. So I've got really, really high standards for myself, which is good because it keeps me motivated, but sometimes it prevents me from stopping and smelling the roses. And every once in a while, when I get a review like that, or when I get tagged in a review online, that really forces me to slow down, just to realize that that's exactly what I wanted. It wasn't, the sales, it wasn't the money, it was the impact. Yeah.
So, in terms of, because obviously you maybe you could have written almost like a psychological text, but you wanted to marry that with a fantasy kind of. Why do you feel that was the best way to get the message across?
That's something that I've been thinking about a little bit recently. I remember thinking, because when I mentioned it to my students, or when they found out that I'd written a book, they were like, how comes it's not a psychology textbook? And I remember thinking, which is a really valid question as a psychology teacher. And I think for me, it was that I wanted to write a story that would be relatable for a younger audience as well. So my book's a young adult book, so it's set very, I mean, there's readers that are 30, 40, 50 years old, but a lot of the readership is young 20s, kind of teenager years. And I wanted to write a story that they would want to read because of the entertainment value, but implicitly learn from as well. So it was like, and also to find like the magic in the mundane as well. So yes, it's there's fantasy elements there, there's mythical creatures and gems and stones and everything, but psychosis and mental health difficulties are very much a part of people's reality. And it was helping to kind of showcase that, I guess, in a way. But yeah, I wanted people to find it interesting, and to people to be able to visualize these cool scenes whilst learning without feeling like they were sitting down to read a textbook, learning as well.
Yeah, no, I completely get it. Yeah. So, in terms of in terms of someone who's read the book and have put it down and have thought about it, what are you hoping that their takeaway would be?
I think there's something to be learned. So there's 4 characters, and each of the characters were kind of inspired by like the different zodiac elemental signs. So like there's a fiery character, there's a down-to-earth character, and I feel like I spent a lot of time figuring out not only the characters' traits, but also the journey that they go on, their character arc, and what they've changed as a result of the story. So I think with Alexis, with the main character, it is very much that story of resilience and finding the power within, and that if you can't find an outward source of light, that you become the light yourself, essentially. And that yes, there may be, he's the water elemental, that yes, there may be a lot beneath the surface of the water, but that doesn't mean that that shouldn't see the light at some point as well. So it's about kind of like finding pride in someone's abilities, not denying that someone has mental health difficulties, because that's never helpful, but not making that the sole identifier. With another character, Demi, who's a lot of people's favorite character. She's the Earth character, the Earth elemental. A lot of people find a lot of love for her faith. She's a really faith-driven character with a strong set of morals, and that she's soft and warm and caring and nurturing, just like the Earth. But also, just like the Earth, she's stubborn and she's very, very set in her ways and in her morals. And I feel like a lot of people, we kind of think of like female main characters in fantasy worlds as like they have to be badass and they have to be weapon wielding and they have to be, you know, really, really tongue in cheek. And she's offering a softer position that can be strong without having to kind of overshadow anyone, I guess. So yeah, I think like the mental health focus was like the main bit. I didn't come this far just to come this far, but also with the other characters is like, you know, finding vulnerability in friendships, which is empowering, I think, in a way, relying on oneself. Like with each of the characters, there's something to learn, but the main one is get up and try again.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, how do your students perceive you now as a writer? Has it changed?
Yeah, and it doesn't help. I don't help myself. When on World Book Day last week, I went around wearing a T-shirt with the stapled new cover of book 2 and a QR code on the back. So I don't feel like I've helped myself. But you know what? When so I've been a teacher at the school I've been at for 4 years now. I qualified as a teacher there. I've stayed there. I've ran the department there in psychology. And last year, I remember saying to the students on results day, because they're all 18 years old when they're doing their A-levels, I said, don't buy me, on the last day of school, don't buy me chocolates because I'm going on holiday. Don't buy me drink because I've got plenty at home. I said, if you're going to do anything, then buy the book because that'd be really amazing. And every single one of them came in and I signed the book for them. And a lot of them would come up to me or message to say, I've not read anything since of Mice and Men back in English, and I really like this, or I can really imagine this as a film, or I really like this character. And my current students now, I feel like, because initially they were like, oh, sir, I saw your TikTok, or oh, sir, you've written a book, and I'm like, yeah. And then the kind of novelty wears off. They're like, oh, okay, what's today's lesson about?
Yeah.
It's not until they see something cool come out where I think they get a bit excited. So like when they see that it's in Waterstones or on Amazon, or I'm doing, you know, a special edition or this thing with the Hunger Games, that's when they're like, oh, actually, I don't think I've ever met an author, and that's when they'll buy a copy and they'll kind of be shy about it. And I'm like, no, come in. And it's not just students that I teach; it's the whole year, the whole school, that are. I don't know. I just wanted to inspire a love for reading, especially for young boys. We often see that young boys is the demographic that reads the least, and there are so many benefits from reading. It doesn't matter what book you read, but reading is really good for perspective taking, for increasing people's ability to empathize and have theory of mind, for literacy as well. And literacy is really, really low in young boys, especially for certain demographics. So I wanted to kind of portray that there are books that can be read by any person, and there are authors that can be any person. It doesn't just have to be kind of like middle class, older authors. It can be younger people. It can be people from working class backgrounds or anything like that as well, and different ethnic backgrounds. So yeah, I like to think that they're fine. I like to think they don't find me annoying.
So on that note, I actually have a student message here for you.
Oh wow!
Your student from your school, Mr. Theopani, is a really inspirational teacher. I honestly never met a more organized and passionate person. He makes sure to engage everyone throughout the lesson and does everything within his power to ensure his class gets the highest grades possible, even spending after-school time with us to do revision. His friendly persona makes him easy to approach and asks questions in and out of lessons. So I just thought that would be really nice for you to hear, because I thought it was exciting, and to see that, you know, you are obviously, the main thing about you is, you know, you are the author, but actually you're obviously a fantastic teacher to a point where kids look up to you. And
thank you so much for sharing that. And I don't know who the student was, but massive thank you if you can extend it to whoever the student was.
I'm sure I can say her name. Her name was Mila Payne.
Miller's she's one of my year 13s, and she's lovely. I'm really grateful for that message. Thank you for sharing that. That's made my day.
It was absolutely. When I first met you, Andy, we spoke, and then her mom called me the next day. She said, "Oh, you met Mila's teacher," and then Mila was on the phone, and she was really excited. It was really sweet to see, because I don't know if she told you this, but I used to be her nanny. So
Yeah, actually, when I met you for the first time, and I told her, and she was like, "Yeah, I remember Veronica." That's
so small world, really funny connection, I have to say. So so obviously I want to find, she is saying that you find time to spend even after school to do studying with them. So I suppose, how are you managing, you're writing a book, having a new one coming out, having this merge with Game of Thrones books, isn't it? No, Hunger Games books. Sorry, apologies. And so how are you managing all that?
Today, you've caught me on a bad day, because today I don't feel like I've been managing. I think I have a really rigid schedule that allows me to be a little bit flexible. Last year I was working full time and I was head of department, so that year burnt me out. I was working all day at the school, doing after school sessions, writing book 2 because that had to be handed in April, publishing book 1, which was due out in April, and trying to build that pre-order campaign. That was a hard year. That was probably the hardest year of my adult life, I think, in terms of managing it. This year it's become a little bit easier because I've gone down part-time as a teacher. So I'm spending my Mondays and Tuesdays prioritizing writing and content creation, and kind of like trying to monetize that to an extent. But at the same time, I offer a lot of my time kind of like unpaid towards teaching, and that's just because the reason why I've stuck around as a teacher is not because I needed to or anything, but because I'm really passionate about education. To get those kind of responses from Miller, like that's everything that I've ever wanted to do. It was never, anyone that becomes a teacher never does it because they think it's an easy job or because they think it's got really high paying salaries. We often go into it because we either had a really good teacher and we want to become that source of inspiration for another person, or we didn't have that many good teachers and we realized how much it would have benefited us if we did have a teacher that cared about us. And that's why I wanted to stick around as a teacher. So yes, it's probably made my life much more difficult to be a teacher, especially to be an A-level teacher where I have to mark, like we've got the biggest A-level, one of the biggest A-levels in the whole school. We've got hundreds of students in that school doing psychology. So I spent the last month marking over 100 papers, that each paper is worth like 96 marks. Like it's been very long. But
wow.
It's when I have that impact with that student, or when I've seen progress, or when I see them on results day, when they're like, yes, you were really strict at the beginning, but I know it's because you cared and because you wanted us to reach our full potential. That's when I'm like, that's why I'm a teacher. So I think, I think a really good way to try and divvy up time if you have got multiple jobs or multiple responsibilities is just to do what you can when you can. It's not like every day needs to be like, the best, most productive day. You can have down days. I think I've realized the importance of that this year, in that I'm accommodating for down day, for like, or at least just hours where I'm just not doing anything. But I think a to-do list is something that's so simple but so beneficial, because from a psychological standpoint, when you write down your goals clearly and then you can feel the satisfaction of ticking them off, you get a dopamine burst. So I'm there like chasing that. I'm like, right, if I'm writing down that today I'm writing one chapter and I'm responding to these emails, when I feel a sense of accomplishment when I do it, it reinforces that behavior of me doing it the next day. So it sounds really like Skinner's rats, like operant conditioning, positive reinforcement, but it really helps.
No, I listen. I love a to-do list, Andy.
Yeah.
And as you say, just putting a line through it to say that's been done.
Yeah. Physically writing down. Yeah, I love that.
So I would say I go even a step further, and when I do something what's not on my to-do list, I put it on there just to tick it off, just for the free dopamine boost.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Andy. You said about teaching. You don't obviously teachers have a hell of a lot of work to do. They go in there with a passion to, impart education onto the young people. And like you say, that comment you got probably means so much. What teacher inspired you to want to be a teacher?
I think I was the latter of those two options. I had some brilliant teachers, I had some really, really hardworking teachers, but I realized that all the teachers that I had, none of them were young, which wasn't an issue at all. There's no, because with age comes experience, and with experience becomes a better quality teacher a lot of the time. But there wasn't anyone that I kind of like identified with.
Okay.
And I had for psychology especially, a lot of my teachers were absent, and we had to like kind of self-teach ourselves a lot of the content, and I would end up learning it and then teaching my friends, and they'd be like, oh, what does this mean? And they would kind of come to me and be like, what does this mean? And because I was passionate about psychology and I'd do extra work around it, I found myself explaining it. So I kind of felt like I was doing it a little bit at a younger age. I did have one teacher though. She was a teacher called Mrs. Shum. She taught me philosophy and ethics, and she was 5 foot nothing, and she was just powerful, a really, really powerful teacher. A lot of people were scared of her, and I, myself included, I was scared of her initially, because she was so strict, so harsh, so like, why isn't this done? Why isn't this done to the best of your ability? This is not to my standards. She would say things like, kindness is an excuse for low expectations. And I just remember thinking, like, yes, I might not have agreed with her methods, but she was so passionate and had really, really high expectations of us as students. And I'd rather have a teacher. I'm someone with dyslexia, so I used to struggle a lot, and I had a lot of teachers that would see my diagnosis and instantly lower their expectations. And she would never do that. She would still say, I'm expecting you to get this because this is what I think you're capable of, and this is what I know I have provided the information for you to attain. So now I don't exactly go. I'm not as strict as she is. I'm not as harsh as she is, but I do have those expectations where, like, I'd rather you aim really, really high and fall short than I kind of cap you at these low expectations that you attain or not even. So she was implicitly a really good teacher of work ethic and attitude to learning, I think, and for philosophy and ethics as well. She's good at
that. Which is useful, I guess.
Yeah, it's always good for a teacher.
Yeah. So, in terms of young people and reading, are they kind of saying, so when's the game coming out? Do I have to actually read this book?
Yeah.
Why is it so important that they actually read this stuff?
I think what we're seeing now more than ever is people's literacy rates are really, really dropping. People are at like adults are at reading age of 13-year-olds. Not as much in this country, but definitely in America, the average reading age of an adult, I think, is like 13 years old. And it's not just about like knowledge that comes from it, but with reading, you get to experience something from the comfort of your own room a lot of the time. And I feel like there's a beauty to that we don't get, and it engages parts of our brains that we don't get with other forms of media. So with things like TV shows and with movies, yes, you can find a community. Yes, it could be engaging and passionate about it, but someone else is presenting all the information to you and you're just passively consuming it. Whereas when you're reading, you're engaging it and you're imagining it for yourself. And I think that's really nice because all it takes is one book to kind of like trigger a love for reading or a love for a genre. And I think sometimes just finding the genre. I get a lot of students saying, or even my family, I had a lot of people saying, oh, I'll read it when I'll watch it when the film comes out. And I'm like, yes, okay, well, hopefully the film come out. But also there's nuances in the written word that sometimes don't get picked up when in a translation to a film as well. And reading it doesn't just have to be sitting down and finding an hour to read every night. Audiobooks is how I consume most books nowadays. On the drive to and from work, I'll go on Spotify and you get a free audiobook every 30 days. I think it's 15 hours for free. And I'm listening to audiobooks and it feels like I'm, it's different to listen to music every day. So audiobooks is a really, really viable option that a lot of people don't consider, but it's a good way to get into reading. And I think nowadays
I'll be honest, that's how I was just about to say that's how I read. because I love books. I love the smell of books. I love thrillers, but there is no time. So it is audiobooks on and from ride to work, on and from ride to holidays. Sometimes I have to be mindful because I've got kids in the car. But I think
depending on the
audiobooks are fantastic.
I completely agree. I love a good audiobook. It's really useful. And I think the thing that's happening now is that yes, reading is, in a large sense, not many people are reading as much or they're finding it as a chore. But with the creation of TikTok and Instagram, we're really starting to see a return to reading. With things like BookTok becoming so popular, it's got like over 1 billion users on BookTok, which is just a corner of TikTok that people go on, and people are sharing their love for reading, and it's kind of making reading cool again. And I think reading's always been a very solitary activity. We do it by ourselves. We don't speak about it to anyone. It's kind of people made to feel a bit embarrassed sometimes, especially if you're an adult that reads, or if you're a man that reads, or if anything. But with having a community online, it's providing a source of company. You get to talk about books that you like. You get to share recommendations, and I think that's made it. That's when we're starting to see a spike now in book sales. Like, considering less and less people are reading, more and more bookstores are opening because TikTok and Instagram are boosting our love for reading again. So that's really, really nice to see.
We've got a comment from someone called Nicole. I don't know who she is, Andy. Some weirdo. She actually works for us.
Okay.
My son Theo is excited to read the new book. He loved the first one, and that's a massive compliment, as he doesn't usually read as much as I'd like him to.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing that. Book one, I think I love book one. I love book one with all my heart. It's got such a special space because of how long it took to create. But with book two, I really feel like I've become such a better writer. We're sending out early copies to influencers to review and give feedback. And some of the feedback, people have read it already within a week, and they're like, "When's book three coming out?" And I'm like, "Whoa!" And it comes. Book two officially comes out on the 24th of April, so only just over a month away now. And I really feel like my writing quality has got better, my storytelling, the actual content of the book, and also the stakes are being raised as well. So I want the characters to age up at the same time as the audience is aging up as well. So thank you, Nicole, for sharing that. I really hope that Theo likes book two as much, if not more, than he likes book one. And yeah, let me know how he likes it.
Yeah. And so you said you have dyslexia. You're a writer. So for people looking in with dyslexia, what advice would you give them?
I've got dyslexia and I've got dyscalculia. So mine with numbers as well. Numbers like that's really difficult. But I think I remember when I got diagnosed, I was 16, so I just finished my GCSEs and I was doing my A levels. And for a long time, I was like, "That's my excuse now. I don't need to try hard. I don't need to work hard because I've got this dyslexia," and that kind of acted as a buffer for me. And then I realized that yes, a diagnosis, and this is my psychological opinion as well, which is it may not be shared by a lot of other people, and that's absolutely fine. But diagnoses are really important for interventions, for treatment, for identifying where someone is struggling and fulfilling a sense of, I guess, like comfort in knowing that they've like there's something out there and then they're not alone in that. But I also feel like sometimes a diagnosis can be limiting towards oneself, and we can kind of use that as a scapegoat for not trying again. And that's what I found myself doing from my personal experience, that I was like, right now I need to cut it out. And it was my parents that would say, you would used to try 10 times harder than you do now, and now you don't. And you feel as dyslexic now as you were then. But now you know you've got that.
So what changed? What went back from I don't have to try hard to going, to go into university to study psychology, to work in the field you do. So what was the flipping point for you?
I think it must have been, I was in year 12, so I must have just done a set of exams and not done as well as I'd like to have hoped. And then I got given my predicted grades from my teachers, and they were much lower than what I thought I was able to attain if I tried really hard. And I just remember thinking, my parents work so hard. I come from a really privileged background where my parents are just there and supportive. And I just thought that it was a disservice to the sacrifices that they've made and to the work that they've done for me to do anything than my best. How can I ask my parents who, you know, gave up everything to work to support me and my brothers and not honor them by trying my best? And I feel like that realization really hit me, and it made me quite emotional at times to think that I was wasting the things that they'd offered me. And that's when I was like, right, I'm going to lock in and I'm going to do my best. And I did as best as I possibly could do. And I got amazing grades and went in to do university, like the course that I wanted. And I don't know. So I think it depends. Some people come from a privileged background and don't try because they've always experienced to having it easy. And other people come from that background and realize how much their parents are putting in and do it. And it's the same. Some people come from a disadvantaged background and want to work to get out of that, which I think is just so inspirational. So yeah, I think it was that. I didn't want to squander my parents' efforts.
I think it's absolutely lovely from what you said, and it doesn't apply just to people with dyslexia, dyscalculia, or any other learning difficulties. I think it really depends what background you had, what upbringing you had, and if you do have the moment you can have for the realization, okay, I can either just sit back and just do okay and do the minimum, just so I pass, or just so I do all right, or I can really push myself hard. And obviously you chose a quite hard path for yourself, right? Because you pushed yourself hard. You said in year 12, that's 1 year to year 13. So you pushed yourself hard to achieve, despite of, as you said, limitation, which has set you back. Because if you didn't know you had dyslexia, you might have never came to the realization. You might have never known. You might have, it might have never make any difference to you. But because it happened, you were able to recover from that, move on. And one thing I wanted to kind of go back to, you said last year was really hard, and I want to point it out and kind of ask you, what is that tell us about you as a person, that you were able to do full-time teaching job, write a book, start writing another one, all that in 1 year? What kind of, what does it say to us about Andy as a one person in himself?
I think that last year was when I realized I've got a lot that I want to prove. I've got a lot that I want to teach. I've got a lot that I want to inspire. And I've got a lot that I want to give back. And by doing last year, and by the students seeing the sacrifice that I was making and the effort that I was putting into their lessons and to my own personal life, it made them feel for like the first time that yes, I am a teacher, but I am also a person beyond that role, and I am I'm a brother and a son and a partner and all these other things. And I wanted to do myself proud, I think, and achieve the goal that I'd set for myself to achieve. And then now that I've kind of done that, I feel a sense of pride that I don't think I would have felt if I hadn't gone down this route. So now I can look back upon my success, and that can inspire me to continue. It was the reassurance I needed, I think, at a really difficult time. So now kind of like I've got that in the back corner. So when I do get the negative voices telling me that I should slow down, I can't do it, I've got that reassurance that if I can survive last year, then I can survive the next few things as well.
Now, I suppose the biggest pressure you have is facing people saying, "Where is the book 3 after your book 2 comes out?" So I'm gonna have a cheeky question. Have you started on a book 3?
I'm a big.
There we go.
Just finished chapter 20 something, so I am my publisher is very happy. And I've not even got a book deal for that one yet. We're still in the process of negotiating book deal for 3 and 4. It's going to be a 4-book series, but I'm ahead of the game. I've got at least a quarter down. Don't tell my publishers that because I'm still negotiating with them. But yeah.
But when because you said really early on that the first book became an instant bestseller. When did you hear that news, and how did that feel?
I heard it the week that it came out. So it came out, I think, on the Thursday, and I found out maybe on the Saturday or the Monday, because publishing works in a weird like time frame. And that was like, okay, cool, done it now, tick. Let's get these kids the great.
I don't mean to jump in, but we're going to be finishing in about 1.5 minutes. So I just wanted to, before it cuts us out, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for watching. Thank you, Andy, for coming. And I think it was a fantastic last question to kind of wrap up the thing. Like, how did that, isn't it? How did that feel when that first came out, when you first heard that?
Let me ask Andy something. Hang on. So it comes out as a book.
Andy, just one thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, just please stay after it cuts off so we can just finish up. Anyway, go.
It comes out as a movie, but you've got 4 main characters. Who do you want them to play? Who do you?
I want there to be young, fresh characters, 17-year-olds to have the opportunity to become stars.
Brilliant.
I love that. What a beautiful answer. That's brilliant.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. I've loved this.
No.
Yeah, so
thank you so much for coming and talking to us.
Yeah.
I want to say goodbye to everyone, all the viewers, and thank them for coming and watch us today. So
thank you.
Keep an eye on a book 2, 24th of April.
Thank you, everyone.
Stay behind, Andy. We want to say a personal thank you.